Bret the Shitman Hart. It's another edition of That Time When, and we're going to be looking at Bret Hart against the Nexus, his US title run in 2010 when the Nexus absolutely brutalised him in a car. But before we look into that, this could have been like That Time When, the whole Bret Hart run, but I feel like with That Time When we can't just look at a certain period, albeit 2010 could be counted as a period, but the two ones we've done before, of course, is Chris Benoit, you know, the whole Ron McMahon incident when he died and they brought back, and then we did Pillman. So, you know, it's like more like incidents that occur within like a month or two. But you know what? We'll address Bret Hart in 2010, right? Because let's just get down to it. But before we actually address him, did you see how depressed and crippled he looked walking out with his hands in his pocket like he couldn't give a fuck? I just thought that was absolutely embarrassing for Bret Hart to actually do that, but, you know, we move on, we have to talk about other stuff. And of course, that brings us to January 4th, 2010. I'll give you a wee history lesson about why Bret Hart came back, because the Monday Night Wars were back. No, it wasn't 1995, it wasn't the 90s, it was the 2010s. The 2010s had just kicked off, and TNA's like, well, you know what, we're going to go head-to-head with WWE, and Bret Hart was phoned up. WWE, Vince was panicking. He's like, fuck, I need something big. I need Bret Hart to come back. Of course, Bret Hart does come back. And this is where I've got a bone to pick with Bret Hart, right? How can he be so bitter towards Goldberg for an accident? A pretty big accident, right? Because it ended Bret Hart's career, right? And I can get why at the time, you know, but it's been like 20 years, Bret, and he's still the relentless jags and like attempts to bury Goldberg. He has to be the bitterest bastard on the planet. Now, if he was still bitter towards Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels, I think it'd be totally understandable. Truly understandable, because, you know, they fucking screwed him out the belt. Even though I think that they were right to do that, because how the fuck can they expect Bret to go over and then just go to WCW with the belt? It would have made the WWF look so weak. But in terms of Bret's actual mindset, how does he not have something against Vince and Shawn? Well, I'll tell you why he doesn't have something against Vince and Shawn, because it starts with this comeback. They gave him a fucking duffel bag full of cash, which of course he's going to accept that. I mean, but that's where my respect goes for Bret Hart. Like, how did he carry such a grudge for those guys? And then, like, money just like, what? So if Goldberg offered him money, would Bret put it under the table? Probably not. Sweep it under the rug? I don't think so. But another thing, I'm not saying Bret Hart coming back killed TNA in its tracks, but would it not have been better for Bret Hart to be like, these guys honestly want me to come back and help their ratings against TNA? Well, why don't I go to TNA? Like, TNA have been offering good money, so Bret should have did another fuck you to the WWE and went to TNA. But instead, what did he do, guys? He absolutely sold out, in my opinion. He should have stuck by his guns, but no, he went back to the company that screwed him. Like, I know he says, oh, I should never have left WWE and all that, but the screw job, Bret, mate, you truly thought you get screwed. Your fans thought you get screwed. To this day, you think you get screwed, but wait, it's alright because Shawn Michaels is Christian and McMahon offered you $5 million in cash and you shook Shawn Michaels' hand. Anyway, I feel like Bret Hart's a bit of a fraud for all that, but we have to move on to the task at hand, and we move on to the 14th of June 2010. Where the Nexus absolutely pulverised Bret Hart. They dragged him backstage. At this point, Bret Hart was the general manager, and we're going to get to the US title run in a minute. Even though it happened before this, I feel like we have to address the Nexus battering Bret Hart. They absolutely batter him. They throw him into a car of a limo, and then they reverse it into another car. Right? I'm not saying that this wouldn't have been, you know, like, I mean, it hurt, but, you know, they start just driving it around, him getting smashed about. It's like these crashes aren't even happening at, you know, like mega mile an hour. It's like, see when Austin get run over, it happened to like 1,000,000 miles an hour. But it's like, this is what current WWE lacks. Just lacks stuff like this. I don't know, like, see people, they think like wrestling's been shit. Well, wrestling has been shit for a long while, but see around like 2009, 10, 11, there was still some great stuff happening. I remember watching it. I was like, what, 10 at the time in 2010? I thought this stuff was fucking brilliant. I thought the Nexus coming in, choking out Justin Roberts with his tie. The whole SummerSlam angle was brilliant. But here we've got Bret Hart just getting drove about in a limo. It's like, what the fuck are we doing, man? They're just constantly driving the guy about. And then like the final hit, I'll accept it. It was a pretty big one. And this practically ruled Bret out for a decent amount of time until SummerSlam when we had that 7-on-7 match. But at this point, Bret is done, right? Like, I understand he was concussed and he had to retire like a decade before this or whatever, but like, he's come back and it's fucking embarrassing. It is. Like, I'm going to talk about his matches here. With the match against Vince, right? It's the worst match ever. In terms of WrestleMania. Like, you think Vince McMahon versus Pat McAfee was bad? Watch this. This happened 12 years ago, right? Where Vince could actually still work a semi-decent match. Like, maybe that's to be a bit of over an exaggeration, but you get where I'm coming from. And Bret Hart, like, he pretends to sit on the chair during the match and pretend that he's tired, and he's like, oh, that was hard work, when in reality he's actually sitting there gasping for air, man, against Vince McMahon. And then the 17th of May 2010 is when he won the US title for The Miz. And it's like, how did The Miz lose the US title to a decrepit Bret Hart and then like win the WWE title? You know, not long after this. I don't know. Absolutely insane, guys. But yeah, that is that time when Bret Hart got battered by the Nexus. You know, hit, I mean, what would you even call it? Whiplash by the Nexus. You know, the Nexus drag him into a car, drive out a boot, batter him, drive him against the walls and all that stuff. And he beat The Miz for the US title. You know, so we've looked at like half his 2010 run. I guess we could look at the first half another day, but Jesus Christ, this was bad. And of course, Cena and Team Cena, Team WWE, they buried the Nexus, they beat them, but I think you guys know all about that. But anyway, that'll do it for this video on Fog Wrestling, looking at that time when Bret Hart got battered by the Nexus and his pish US title run.